With the Financial Times reporting that Donald Trump has raised a war chest of more than $100 million from his 2021 political fundraisers, could it be that the Donald is planning a return to the White House in 2024? Joining me now to answer that question is a man who knows him intimately well, former senior Trump advisor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark, and congratulations to everybody at GBNews.
Oh, well, thank you. And we're delighted that you've joined us on this brand new news network, Dr. Gorka. First of all, what do you know about Donald Trump at the moment? Is he on a war footing? Is he planning a political comeback?
Well, he is the de facto conservative kingmaker. If he endorses you, then you've got a shoe-in with the 74 million people who voted for him, which, by the way, is a historic record. No incumbent president got more votes than Donald Trump did last year. I went to Trump Tower a few weeks ago. I went to see with him. Before I went there, I had a 95% certitude that my former boss was going to run in 2024. After I met with him, you can take it to the bank, Mark. He is running to take back his position as president in 2 years' time.
And why do you think he wants another run at the White House, Dr. Gorka?
Well, unfinished business. Number one is unfinished business. He ran on a pledge to drain the swamp. There are a lot of swamp monsters still left. Washington is still morally bankrupt, financially bankrupt, lots of things, lots of corruption that needs to be fixed. And also, along with many of the people who voted for him, he has serious doubts about the veracity of the results of the last election. So he's not convinced of the fact that he lost in the first place.
His rallies are sold out. He's raising millions. He's still a popular man.
His rallies are stupendous. He's just started again. People waiting outside hours on end. He's filling stadia wherever he advertises he goes. And on the flip side, you have the incumbent president going to the state where he grew up in Pennsylvania, being heckled by the residents of Pennsylvania. So it tells you a little something about perhaps the veracity of the results of the last election.
Has he moved on from what he considered to have been a stolen election?
Not at all, not in the slightest. We have several audits in place happening right now by the state legislatures, by the state secretaries of the various states, especially the battleground states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. And those are revealing some very, very disturbing findings. For example, thousands and thousands and thousands of mail-in ballots, these massive ballots that were mailed in as per the COVID regulations that arrived pristine without having been folded. So either they were delivered magically by angels who didn't have to fold them, or there was something dodgy going on with those mail-in ballots.
Is there some hope then that he can contest the most recent election result and get back into the White House before 2024?
I've counseled him not to follow that tack. I've said instead that we use the results of those audits as a political campaigning tool to demonstrate the absolute corrupt nature of the Democrat Party in those cities, in those districts, and use that as part of his campaign. So I'm not one of these people who believes in reinstatement. There's no precedence for that in terms of a presidential election. The Electoral College has decreed the results of the last election. So I've told him, get to the bottom of it, get all the results, and use it as part of your platform in terms of cleaning up the corruption for your second time in office.
And what is President Trump's mood at the moment, having met him in recent weeks?
Well, look, I have a national radio show, and his mood is much like the mood of my 3 million listeners who call in every single day. They're angry. They see in the last 6 months a nation on a downward spiral. We see a southern border that has been opened up by Biden with 6,000 illegal immigrants crossing the border every day, 20% of them with the coronavirus being dispersed across the country. We see the results of the Russian cyber attack that shut down the petrol supply to 43% of the eastern seaboard. We see the desultory economic figures. We see the world laughing at us, whether it's Putin, whether it's China, whether it's North Korea. we see his pathetic, cuckold-like lack of response to the sad sight in Cuba of people suffering under communism, waving our flag, waving the stars and stripes, and him not having any response. So, those 74 million people, I can attest to, as a radio show host, as somebody who has his own TV show, they're angry, and he is reflecting that anger. People are truly, truly angered that America had the biggest economy, the best economy, and now it's a shadow of its former self in just the last 6 months. It took Carter at least 2.5 years to do this level of damage to America. This senile old man, Joe Biden, has done it in less than half a year.
However, is President Trump tainted by the riots on the Capitol at the last election?
Only insofar as Nancy Pelosi is using the riots as a political cudgel, especially with her new select committee. But I was there. I was literally, Mark, I was in the front row outside the White House listening to my former boss as he gave the speech in which he said, we are now going to, quote, march peacefully and patriotically to Congress. That's why they may talk of insurrection, this absurd accusation. Nobody has been charged with an insurrection. The only insurrection in world history where nobody was armed. And by the way, the only person who got shot was a Trump voter, a 14-year Air Force veteran, who was shot to death by a police officer whose name we are not allowed to know for the last 6 months. So no, factually, he's not tainted. But of course, the left will try, as they always do, to smear those who love this country.
Well, does that perception, if it's only a perception, it could be damaging, though, couldn't it, to Mr. Trump among moderate voters? Is that a concern?
I think, all other things being equal, perhaps yes. But if you look at the radicalism of what's happened in the last 6 months, I see two things waking up, having a Damascene moment for those who consider themselves to be apolitical, the vaunted white suburban mothers, the minivan drivers. Number one, after a year and a half of COVID, they've actually seen the depth of left-wing ideology being indoctrinated into their children when their children were at home, and they saw these video lessons about critical race theory, how if you're white, you're inherently a bigot. That's woken a lot of people up to support Donald Trump, who's against critical race theory and BLM and all that other radicalism. And the last one, which I personally think is really going to be the catalyst for a lot of people moving from the middle to conservatism, is this radical transgender agenda from the Democrats. The idea that you can have a high school kid, you can have a girl who's spent 3 years getting up at 5 a.m., training for the track and field, becoming a long-distance runner or whatever it is, and then suddenly along comes a guy called Bruce, weighs 50 pounds more than she does, has got more muscle mass, and says, today my name's Jennifer, and then crushes that young girl's dreams of ever being a professional athlete, or is allowed to use the same toilet and the same changing room as that pubescent girl. A lot of parents are going to say, hang on, these Democrats, they're crazy. So January the 6th will be a memory long forgotten by the time we go to the polls in 2024. And more people are going to be concerned with the economy and the deep radicalism of the Democrat Party, which is not the Democrat Party of your father, your grandfather, and especially not your Democrat Party of John F. Kennedy, who would not be allowed in today's Democrat Party.
In this program, Sebastian, we've been reflecting on a story coming from the States and the American health authorities suggesting that biological sex should not feature on the public part of a birth certificate. I don't know if you're across that story, but I just wonder whether that's the kind of culture war issue that could really deliver for Donald Trump in 2024.
I think in combination with the state the economy is already in, and the threats coming from the White House of another shutdown, despite the fact that we're on top of things, the Delta variant isn't more deadly, it's more transmissible but more deadly, but less deadly. That combined with this, I mean, can we just stop for a second? They call conservatives science deniers. If you deny the XXXY chromosome of a male and a female, you are a fabulist. You are a science denier. As my good friend Chris Plant, another radio host, says here, if you've got an outie you're a boy. If you've got an innie, you're a girl. No matter what a surgeon does, whatever you pump yourself with in terms of hormones, you cannot change that. It is non-negotiable, and it's time to bring the crazies back down to earth.
In the last couple of days, we've seen the governor of Texas outlaw vaccine passports, and both Texas and Florida, which are Republican states, have had a very different approach to COVID restrictions, lifting, for example, the mask mandate many months ago, whilst California and New York remained locked down. Will that narrative favour Donald Trump in the long run?
I think at the end of the day, it will, because we'll see a bifurcation of this nation where states like Florida and Texas are flourishing economically. People are getting back to work. Nobody's having to wear their COVID muzzles. People don't live in fear. I'm not afraid of COVID. I caught COVID. I crushed it. I'm not afraid of the Delta variant. And just to use the left's rhetoric against them, they've been banging us over the head with the right to kill babies in the womb. And at the end of the day, they always have the same mantra, my body, my choice. Well, guess what? When it comes to vaccines, when it comes to masks, when it comes to COVID-19, my body, my choice. And we're going to see people reassert their individual liberty and put an end to this asinine risk aversion that is taking over Democrat cities.
If Trump were not to run, and you've said the likelihood is high that he will, if he anoints someone else, is it Trumpism or republicanism that will be at play?
That's the great question. I had two leading lights of the Trump America First movement on my radio show for a whole hour, Matt Gaetz and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. They both assured me that Trumpism is winning. I'm a little bit more leery. I see the business as usual, scratch my back, scratch your back, establishment Republican Party trying to reassert itself. However, they're not doing very well in the polls. The old Bush era type establishment bow tie wearing, blue blazer wearing Republicans are slowly dying a death. So yes, I do think the MAGA movement is alive and well. I do think America First will be the defining identity of conservatism in America, but we still have a little bit of heavy lifting to do in terms of the philosophical and ideological support structure for that new movement.
Setting aside the sartorial choices of Republicans and apart from America First, what are the key differences, Sebastian, between Republicanism and Trumpism?
Number one, that we are, let's remind everybody, I find it amusing that my fellow Americans forget this. In 2016, for the first time in the Republic's history, we elected a non-politician to become president. From George Washington to Barack Obama, 44 times it was a former senator, former congressman, or a retired general. For the first time ever, we chose a non-politician to be president. So number one, it's a full rejection of the elite, just with Brexit. It's exactly the same thing. It is a wholesome, fulsome rejection of the establishment and the elite. Second, it's securing the border. It's national sovereignty. It's non-intervention. It's not being isolationist, but it's saying, to quote the president, no more dumb wars, no more stupid wars. It's reinvigorating the economy. It's free trade, but fair trade. And it's bringing back pride to the working class and jobs for the working class in the United States. This is the beautiful irony of the last 4 years. You had a billionaire from Manhattan who was the biggest champion of the blue-collar working class since Ronald Reagan. And I saw this with my own eyes, in rallies, in the Rust Belt of America, people who'd voted Democrat all their lives shouting, USA, 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 for this billionaire walking out onto the stage. So it's saying that America is good and America First is also good, and really a rejection of the globalist policies of the political elite of yore.
What would you say, Sebastian, to former Republican voters who consider Donald Trump to be a dreadful human being and unfit for high office?
I'd ask them, give me the proof. I mean, truly give me the proof. I've seen him up close. I've worked for him in the administration. I advised him as a candidate. I've been alone with him in the Oval Office. What you see is what you get. And, irrespective of the tenor of his tweets, and I'm just telling you my personal experience, and I'd swear this on the good book if you asked me to. This is one of the most thoughtful individuals I have ever had the honor of working for. He takes care of the people who work for him. He is conscientious. Yes, he doesn't have the marble-filled mouth of the WASP elite of the clubs and the beautiful people of the Manhattan jet set. But he grew up in Queens as the son of a building contractor who built houses for poor-income families. So he is salt of the earth who made good and became a billionaire and a reality TV show host. The idea that he's some kind of ogre, this man is more pro-life, I'm sorry to say this, than Ronald Reagan. No president has ever addressed, no sitting president has addressed the anti-abortion March for Life each year in Washington, D.C. Oh, until Donald Trump did it. This is a man who has compassion that is boundless, but of course the left-wing legacy lying media won't have you see any of that.
I mean, Sebastian, all of that is duly noted, but the final point on this one, before we get to the prospects for the election, we're post-watershed, so that notorious Pussygate tape.
Yeah, what about it? I mean, to quote somebody, we discussed this with some friends of ours, literally 3 nights ago at dinner, and this male friend of mine said when he heard that, he rang up his wife, and his wife asked for her reaction. And she said, "Are you kidding me? I'm going to vote for him more than ever." Why? Because I know that every guy talks like this in the changing rooms when the girl's out there. And the rank hypocrisy, the New Times, CNN, come on, that's what about to try and make it hypocrisy of the news in like no, the aborted B. Bush the tape that was released. Let's remember that was released, and he still beat Hillary Clinton. So that tells you what Americans really think about who the hypocritical people are.
Now, Sebastian, I'll balance this out. We had a debate on this programme a week ago with the question about whether Joe Biden is fit for high office. I don't think he is. I think he's in the throes of severe dementia. I think it's very concerning that someone with access to the nuclear codes has to be reminded on a regular basis that he is the president. So I'm probably more likely to win the Democratic nomination at the next election than he is. Actually, I think we might have lost Sebastian. So, well, what a fascinating interview. Well, next time he's on, I will ask for his reaction to who it is that Donald Trump might be facing in 2024. It won't be Joe Biden. Will it be Kamala Harris, who at the moment appears to be the least popular politician in America? It'll be a fascinating conversation and one we'll certainly return to.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.